A very, very good day to you, friends, wherever you be on this spinning orb, not spinning orb. Very happy to welcome you all to the 50th Lazarus Symposium. And God knows I never imagined we'd get here 5 years ago when we began the Lazarus Initiative. I genuinely thought within a year to 2 years we would have finished our inquiry into the third-party intervention taking place into human mRNA DNA, which is how that was the genesis point of the Lazarus Symposium, as you well recall. And here we are in our 5th year, ever unfolding a lotus flower of revelation as it relates to our relationship with the cosmos, our relationship with reality, with our own consciousness and our own upshift at the collective level, resurrecting ourselves from the proverbial dead. That was the point of the Lazarus Initiative and the Lazarus Symposium. And today I can tell you, I have a panel of superb icons to help guide us through the latest revelation, which we're living through and which is hurtling by best accounts toward us. Of course, I'm speaking about the fact that we're experiencing this moment of extraordinary cosmic significance. 3I Atlas is not simply a passing interstellar object, and its speed, trajectory, and chemical makeup suggests something far more profound. Unlike typical comets, Atlas carries signatures of intelligent design, a hyperbolic path, close flybys of Mars, Venus, and Jupiter, and an uncanny alignment with planetary positions and sacred cosmic ratios. And today, our goal is not to ask whether this is artificial. It is, but to explore what 3I Atlas is actually communicating, how it is interacting with our solar system, and by extension, our consciousness, what humanity should take from its passage. Our panel brings together perspectives from physics, investigation, exopolitics, and cosmic messaging. So we're moving essentially from the scientific anomalies to potential agendas, to the harmonic patterns and mystical dimensions, integrating remote viewing insights and historical parallels. And no happier a man will you ever find at the helm of Lazarus, let alone being your galactic commander for just the next few hours, than Sasha Stone sitting here. And why is that, you may ask? It's because my secret crush is finally appearing on Lazarus Symposium, and that is Linda Moulton-Howe, the Emmy Award-winning investigative journalist and documentarian. Linda, as millions of you know, has spent decades uncovering government secrecy, UFO phenomena, and anomalous events on Earth and beyond. And her recent focus has been on the interlopers theory and updates related to 3I Atlas. Linda Moulton-Howe, you are so very welcome to the Lazarus Symposium.
Well, thank you. And it is making me remember how vividly a night back in September of 2017, when ʻOumuamua was coming through the solar system, and Avi Loeb and I had agreed on a very specific night to do an interview. And that was the night that I really began thinking about how comets could be used as camouflage by an advanced intelligence. And it was shortly after that he and I had this interview that we were talking, that the comet suddenly began accelerating up to 196,200 miles an hour. And Avi Loeb and I and others at that point were talking about what would be generating that kind of energy to get it to go up to 196,200. And now here we are in the beginning of September almost of 2025. And now not only is acceleration becoming a big question, it is ratios of CO2 to H2O to, is this actually increasing photons when if you had a cube of ice, it's not going to be able to do that. And that this is, the last I heard, it's at least 15 miles long. I know there's been some updates on exactly the size, but that it's huge. And as Avi said back in 2017, we're talking about something that has a shape in which it is 10 times longer than it is wide. And he was the first to suggest that it was artificial and that it might be something not necessarily in a threat category, but it might be our first official introduction to how in this universe, something that looks perhaps like a comet could be camouflage for something that may or may not have intent inside of our solar system of interacting with a planet. And I would say we're in the same sort of position right now as we are doing this broadcast, with more data that is going to be coming in. And I'm very interested to hear what the rest of you have to say. But that's where my attention to what is happening astronomically, and could repeating comets end up being some sort of monitoring technology.
Indeed.
And here we are. It's in front of us again.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that intro. Dr. John Brandenburg joining us, the plasma physicist, space scientist, and author, best known for his research suggesting past nuclear events on Mars. And John brings a rigorous scientific eye to cosmic anomalies, whilst also noting how media and government react to disclosure. Very worthy to all the worthy events that are happening at this time of revelation. John, can I see you in the back room there? Yes, I can. Very, very happy to bring you into the Lazarus Symposium.
Pleasure and honor to be on your show, Sasha. Especially with Linda, joining the delightful Linda Moulton-Howe, who's been so courageous. Yeah,
yes,
well,
indeed.
But no, as a scientist from a defense background, this all looks highly suspicious. As Linda has suggested, it looks almost as if it's a probe camouflaged as a comet at this point.
Yes.
And we have to stay on our toes. There is what's called the dark forest hypothesis that basically says that the universe may not all be friendly to people like us, especially underdeveloped species such as ourselves, and we must be careful. But just like wandering around a dark forest, you're careful who you go introduce yourself to. It may be a grizzly bear for you, you know. So anyway, it is a time when we are learning a great deal about the cosmos as it is. And I believe this will end up being a very positive development for the human race in the end.
Beautiful. Thank you, John, very much for that. Dr. Michael Salla, founder of exopolitics.org, the pioneer in disclosure research and author of numerous books on ET contact, secret space programs, and interstellar geopolitics. And Michael, as Lazarus knows well, brings intel gathered from remote viewing assessments and whistleblowers regarding 3I Atlas. Michael, so happy to see you again today.
Thanks for having me, Sasha. When I look at 3I Atlas and the data that I've received from various sources, what comes to mind for me is that we are witnessing a solution to a problem identified in the 1960 study that was issued by NASA to the US Congress, the Brookings Report. And that said any announcement concerning the discovery of extraterrestrial life could lead to societal breakdown. And this has been a profound exopolitical problem for the subsequent 65 years. How can the powers that be release the truth that we are not alone, that extraterrestrials exist, without their leading to a kind of societal collapse as people lose confidence in governments, especially if the truth emerges about a long-term cover-up? And I think when we look at the data that's coming in about 3I Atlas, the conclusion that can be reached is that there is some power, some force, I believe a positive force, a benevolent force, that is steering 3I Atlas on its trajectory with the purpose of making mainstream astronomers reach the conclusion that this is an artificial craft, that this is in fact evidence of extraterrestrial life. And because of its trajectory through the solar system, I think this is a very gentle way of announcing the discovery of extraterrestrial life without there being the kind of societal breakdown that was intimated in the Brookings report from 1960-61.
Very good. Thank you so much for that. And finally, friends, joining us today, David Sereda, frequency guru and really a pioneer of the Lazarus Symposium himself. He's been here from inception point and very keen today to see a short presentation that David is going to be bringing to us. I want to just, before I bring David on, I just want to say that from my perspective, the seminal question that I'm asking is, what if 3i Atlas is not here to be studied as an object, but to be read as some kind of a text, a deliberate communique written in physics, chemistry, and harmonic code? That is the essential piece that I'm bringing forward. David, welcome, brother.
Thank you, Sasha. Good to see you, Linda. It's been a really long time since I've connected with you, from way back when. Well, first of all, the bullseye target of 3i Atlas is 591, Sasha, which is, remember, the number of days my wife called out my name after she died was 591 days, divided by the golden ratio is the exact orbit of Earth. So that's the bullseye, which I'll be showing later, which is inside the orbit of Mars, so which is the number that you build the hyperdimensional solar system with. But first, what got me into 3i Atlas is I mapped the perihelion of ʻOumuamua, closest position to the sun, 21 Borisov, and 3i Atlas, and the timing is 1 to the golden ratio squared, which is 1 to 2.618, 0339887. So all three, and I tried to get this data to Avi Loeb, are perfectly harmonically to the golden ratio. 591 to the golden ratio squared, but 591, which is its bullseye target, divided by the golden ratio is Earth, divided by the golden ratio again is Venus, divided by the golden ratio again is hyperdimensional planet 139, divided by the golden ratio again is Mercury, and if you keep going, you'll get to the height of the Great Pyramid of Egypt. Now, I'm going to demonstrate later today in 10 minutes, when you give me the green light with visuals, every major religious holiday of all of our biggest religions. When 3i Atlas first was coming in, crossing Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars will be Yom Kippur, the most holy day for the Israelites, and there's a perfect alignment I'm going to show you on Yom Kippur, which is October 1st to the 2nd. And Loeb has noted that it will be closest to Mars on the 3rd. And then on Christmas, it will be at Great Pyramid angle to Earth, which is impossible, and it's exact. It will leave its closest position to Earth on Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, and then it'll keep going. And when we get to Jupiter, it will be the holiest day for Islam, the night of power, where Loeb has instructed. In fact, Congressman Luna is supporting him to use the Juno spacecraft to rendezvous on the 16th of March with 3i Atlas to get incredible pictures of it. And that's the night of power in Islam, which is the day in Islam where the Archangel Gabriel starts reciting the Quran to the Prophet Muhammad. So I'm going to demonstrate all this later, but this thing knows exactly what it's doing. And it seems to be in perfect alignment on these planet crossings to every major religious state on this planet. And I will prove that mathematically.
Beautiful. So, we'll call you in for that presentation momentarily. I just want to begin by inviting John, really from a physics perspective, to break it down in the simplest terms in no more than about 2 minutes. What about Atlas's speed, trajectory, and unusual composition challenges our current understanding of natural celestial objects?
He's muted.
Christy, please, can you be on that? Thank you.
Okay, the object is interstellar, meaning it's coming in from another star system. That means its orbit is completely different than almost any other object we've ever seen. It's only the third interstellar object we've been able to identify. So it's coming in very fast. It's coming in the opposite direction of the planet's what's called a retrograde direction. So it's going to be passing the planets very, very fast, almost as if it wants to attract attention. Its trajectory is completely improbable, and it comes in at the plane of the orbits of the sun, and it's the planets with the sun, and of course it's going to pass by Mars on Yom Kippur, and it's going to pass by Jupiter, and also going to make somewhat of an encounter with Venus, and this is very improbable. And to add to the improbability, when it goes past Mars, it will be in between. Mars will be in between, or the sun will be in between Mars and the Earth, so we can't observe it directly, which means it could come out from behind the sun with a completely different trajectory. One won't understand how it arrived there. Not only this, its composition is completely unprecedented. It's almost all carbon dioxide, and very little water. And this is water is the most common chemical in the universe. It's hydrogen plus oxygen, which is the third most abundant element in the universe, made in the stars. And so to have something made of carbon dioxide, curiously enough, this thing looks like a part of the atmosphere of Mars that's been frozen into a snowball, because it matches the composition of the planet Mars's atmosphere. So once again, it's almost as if it's pointing us towards Mars. And of course, as you know, I have found evidence for not only a past Earth-like period, but an indigenous culture and a thermonuclear holocaust on Mars. So I am arguing, in fact, to people that the way to disclose the fact that we're not alone in the universe is using the planet Mars, that this is a gift, so that we can disclose that we're not alone in the universe, but doing so with a dead civilization that looks primitive. So it's very non-threatening to people.
Right.
You're not going to see an Independence Day or War of the Worlds from Mars, because everything is archaeological. It's all dead. And that, believe it or not, is a very good thing for allowing the public to overcome its fear and embrace the idea of a living cosmos out beyond.
Beautifully summarized. Thank you for that. Linda, having investigated anomalies for decades, which elements of Atlas, in your view, its emissions, rotations, or chemical signatures, stand out as most suggestive of design rather than chance?
Well, I think that there has been acceleration changes, and the very fact that there is this strange ratio between the CO2 and the H2O, ratios perhaps never seen in a comet ever before, as well as the fact that we are looking at something that seems to be completely covered up this time as opposed to ʻOumuamua. And I remember that one of the issues after I had done the Earth Files YouTube channel broadcast back in 2017, that many different engineers and astronomers and others were calling me with bits of other information that seemed to be supporting the idea that, in fact, what had come through, like the speed up to 196,200 miles an hour, that it was not a typical ice comet. But between then and now, with Borisov in between, I feel that there is something that is in the argument that Avi Loeb makes and John has made, that this is something that is not behaving at all like a normal comet. And when I did some research on Edgar Casey, the sleeping prophet, because it had been suggested to me that he had written in a logbook about a date. He's going back 70, 80 years, that on the date of October 29th, 2025, Edgar Casey, writing back more than a half century ago, that there would be something, and the words have been uttered, and you find in print a variety. The one that stuck in my mind, blade of light. This man who had been so accurate about so many of his remote viewings, that he said that what would come into our solar system on October 29th, 2025 would be something akin to a blade of light, and that there would be interaction, whether it was destruction, attack, environmental atmosphere, whatever it was, there would be interaction with our planet Earth. And I wonder if the rest of you colleagues in this program, have you read Edgar Casey going back to that period of time, and do you think that there actually could be a connection, a mysterious, eerie connection now as we get into the fall of 2025 with the famous sleeping prophet date of October 29th, 2025 being this blade of light? Do you think there could be some connection over all these decades?
Yes.
Well, David, one moment, please, before you do. I just want to bring Michael in here, and I want to ask Michael in double-blind remote viewing sessions, and let's get back to Edgar Casey in a moment and continue that thread of Linda's. But in double-blind remote viewing sessions, what have you and your observers detected about atlases of form, movement, or apparent intelligence? That's the question I want to get out of you before we move on.
Sure. The Future Forecasting Group did a double-blind remote viewing of 3i Atlas, and what was found, and this was announced by Dick Allgaier, it was that it was actually 3i Atlas was actually being guided by a craft of some kind that was in stealth next to it. And that corroborates some of the information I got from other sources saying that 3i Atlas is really part of a disclosure plan that is in control of a part of the Solar Warden program, which is very enlightened. These are kind of Navy officials who have been out in the galaxy for a long time, have interacted with advanced civilizations, and are wanting to disclose to humanity the truth. But they want to do it in a very gentle way, kind of like what John described in terms of Mars, that future Mars missions would discover remnants of ancient civilizations there, that would be a gentle way of disclosure. I think what we're seeing with 3i Atlas is part of that they are guiding it on its trajectory. It's going to pass those planets that have been mentioned, and in doing so, it's going to change course at various points, which makes it unequivocally an artificial object for astronomers who will be closely tracking it. And that's going to lead to a profound rise in consciousness among the scientific community without it triggering any kind of societal backlash or any kind of disintegration. So I think it's a gentle way of awakening humanity to the truth of extraterrestrial life.
Beautiful. David, let's crack on now. You have a 10-minute presentation covering the significance of golden ratio, biblical dates, and planetary orbits in relation to these interstellar visitors. But kindly begin by tailing off Linda's question regarding Edgar Casey.
Okay, let me share a screen, because what she just said matches exactly my hyperdimensional orbit. So let's go where it is on October the 29th first, and then I'll go to my presentation. So you see this?
Yep.
exactly will be at position 591 within that date of the 29th of October, which is its bullseye. That's its bullseye, which it will deflect off of, which is just in Mars has an orbit of 686.9 something Earth days. 591 is inside of it. Remember, 591 divided by the golden ratio gives us Earth, and then divided by the golden ratio again gives us Venus, and you just keep going and you'll go all the way to the top of the Great Pyramid, and multiplied by the golden ratio, you're going to hit all the other planets to high degrees of accuracy, which I presented here before. So I don't want to spend too much time on that. I'm astounded that Casey's number is so close to mine. So now watch what happens when I go to my presentation here. You're going to really see the beauty of how this visitor is doing this so precisely on all the planets. So let me just share screen now with my
we lost your presentation for a second, so just bring it back for us.
Yeah, no, I got rid of that one because that's actually the live screen on the Sky Live of where it is. You can punch in any date so you want on the live screen. So now I'll go to my main presentation, which is from let's see, here it is. So let me go to this is my Medium article, and you'll see that so I go back in time on this. So let me click on this image. So this is the first planet crossing last June 13th and 14th. It's crossing Neptune's orbit, which is the ascension day of Christ in the Orthodox calendar for 2024. Now, lunar calendars are not very accurate to solar calendars, and these dates repeat. I'm going to go through this quick, and if people want to see the finer details, Christy will send them the article. So this is when it crosses our next planet orbit, which is going to be Uranus, as the Greeks pronounce it, on the, give or take the 6th of May, which in the Ascension Day of Christ, which is when his 11 disciples saw him ascend into the sky 39 days after Easter. It will fall on that date in 1948 and 2027, which again is a massive coincidence. Then we're going to come to the next planet here, which is the orbit of Jupiter. This is coming in, and then we're going to do the same thing when it goes up. It falls on, again, the Buddha's Day of Enlightenment is June. Buddha's Day of Enlightenment and his birthday intersect with the Ascension Day of Christ many, many years on the lunar calendar. So again, this is coming in. Then the next position here, it's going to be crossing Saturn's orbit on the date of Miraj, Muhammad's journey through the seven heavens, January 26, 27, 2025. So we're very, very we're correct to the year on that calendar. Keep going. It's going to get really interesting here, because this is when it crosses the orbit of 16 Psyche, which is this asteroid that's made of extremely, extremely valuable precious metals. It crossed this past August 14th, 15th. The 15th is the Mother Mary's Day of Ascension, which is very precise. I don't know how it's doing all this, but it's doing it. Then it comes here, its closest position to Mars, which is within 1 day of Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement for the Israelites, and the day Moses received the 10 Commandments for the second time from his God. And that's remarkable, but it gets more remarkable than that, because on Yom Kippur itself, right here, you will see it's perfectly aligned to Mars, Mercury, and the Sun in this perfect alignment. Again, I don't know how it keeps doing this. And then next, it will cross the orbit of Mars, not the closest position to Mars, within the 13th of October, which is the anniversary of the miracle of the sun at Fatima. Again, I don't know how it keeps doing this. It's very precise. Then its bullseye target right here, I actually dated it the 23rd of October. Linda Moulton-Howe gave us the 29th. So those are incredibly close. And, for those of you who are familiar with my hyperdimensional solar system, you'll know more about what that means. So now we keep going. Now it's going out This is its closest distance to Earth using Avi Loeb's charts. The 20th to the 25th. The 21st of December is solstice this year, and Christmas is the 25th. This is Loeb's most up-to-date chart. You'll notice right here, the tip of this blue line is Christmas Day, and the next day, the 26th, it leaves its closest position. Again, I don't know how it's doing this. On Christmas Day, 3i Atlas and Earth will be at Great Pyramid angle, which is, again, impossible. The details of this are phenomenal. Going back out on Orthodox Christmas, the 7th and 8th of January, the Egyptians celebrated on the 8th. It will be again crossing Psyche 16, again, 2 times on holy dates. This is a triangle of on the same date, Orthodox Christmas, between Earth, Psyche, and Atlas. Again, Psyche is moving this way, so if they wanted to mine it for precious metals, it's perfectly timed. Now we're coming to Jupiter. This is the big date because it's correct to the year for the Night of Power in Islam, marking when the Archangel Gabriel delivered Muhammad the first verses of the Quran. And this is when Congressman Luna is supporting Loeb for a Juno spacecraft intercept with Atlas. Again, perfectly timed to our most religious dates. And this here is when it will cross Saturn, which is 2026, July 19th, which is Egyptian Sirius heliacal rising. Also, the feast day of Mary Magdalene is July 22nd, which again is highly remarkable because that calendar is a star calendar, which is far more accurate than a lunar calendar. And then it will, on its way out, go through Uranus on the Buddha's birthday and the Ascension Day of Jesus, May 26th, harmonic. And so there you go. So that is a really quick nutshell. Did I lose? Were you able to see that or no?
Yes, indeed. Yes. Does anyone here want to speak to that? Linda, did you want to speak to that?
Well, the idea of extraordinary mathematical relationships over a long period of time is something that has come up in, we'll say, the greater human abduction phenomena of some of the things that people have been exposed to during an abduction that might have something they think to do with time running, dates coming. And it may be that that is part of the proof that we're dealing with extraterrestrial mind, because this is what they do even on an individual basis.
Indeed. Michael.
Yes, I found it remarkable. Thank you, David, that especially that period as we go into 2026, 2027, that dovetails with the data that's come out of a number of whistleblowers. John Ramirez, ex-CIA, he said that 5 years ago, he said that on 2027 there would be something occurring which would essentially lead to disclosure. So that trajectory that David identified kind of matches that. And of course, if there is a flyby of 3i Atlas as it's going by Jupiter on its outbound path, I mean, that would probably be something that would lead to astronomers maybe concluding that we are looking at an artificial object. And then that kind of raises all sorts of possibilities as to exactly how this will play out as a disclosure event, because I think fundamentally that's what we're looking at here. As it goes through its various, as it goes through the trajectory through the different planetary orbits, eventually it's going to become clear that this is a spacecraft of some kind, and then though that intelligence that is guiding it, I mean, what will it do with 3i Atlas? I mean, we have all sorts of possibilities, so it'd be very interesting to see what David comes up with, what he thinks may be happening in that 2026, 2027 timeframe.
Indeed. John, can I ask you to chime in here as a professor? Number one, what is 3i Atlas, the moniker? What does that stand for? What is meant by 3i Atlas? How are these things named? And if you could kindly comment to David's presentation.
Yes. For one thing, the 3i Atlas means it is the third, that's 3i, which means interstellar in the nomenclature they've adopted in astronomy. It is the third object that is interstellar that they've identified. The other ones were ʻOumuamua, the first one that established a context of like a reconnaissance mission by some other culture of our solar system, particularly since it passed close by the Earth. And then there was the comet Borisov, which behaved like a classic comet. It did everything pretty much like everyone expected it to do. And so it almost established kind of a baseline. Numerical relationships in our solar system are very important. There's what's called the Titus-Bode law, which cannot be derived by any known model of solar system formation, which shows that you can derive the orbits of the planets from a simple mathematical sequence, and it's quite precise and works all the way out to the planet Uranus, and it seems to become less precise at Neptune, and of course doesn't include Pluto. But numbers are extremely important. The whole idea of quantum mechanics is integer numbers. So there's also the aspect that David has alluded to, that this may be someone outside our solar system encouraging us to have disclosure by deliberately creating a set of numerical relationships with the holy days of our religious faith. This is a sign that they respect that about us, but at the same time, they want us to embrace the living cosmos and not be focused just on the Earth. So I think that it's very possible that if this was a highly planned trajectory, which I believe it was, but I still lean very strongly to the fact that this is a reconnaissance, but that doesn't mean it's hostile at all. It could be quite benign, just like the Voyager probe of the outer planets was timed to to do close encounters with the various planets. So David has pointed out there are these interesting coincidences with the major face of the humanity, and I'm hoping that means good things are going to be happening. I will mention I did write a book called Cosmic Awakening. I've talked about it with Michael. If you look at the example of Japan, when Japan was opened up to the world from being a medieval isolated kingdom by Commodore Perry, which was a very friendly visit. They wanted to establish trading and also recover lost sailors in Japan. And what happened, though, that the initial reaction of Japanese society was, this is the end of the world, and they had a lot of disorders in the villages among the peasants, who basically decided that this was the end of the world, and they would have wild parties in the streets until the local samurai lords told them to calm down and get back in their fields and work. So there is precedence for this being possibly very disruptive to human societies, a disclosure event that is not handled correctly. And so what I'm hoping is that this will point us in particular towards the planet Mars, that we can have a Mars disclosure process that will be, that people will look on this as a science fiction adventure rather than something threatening.
Indeed. Well, you know, many, many years ago, I think well over 20 years ago, I was very dear friends with Meredith and Brian O'Leary. And Brian, as we all know, was an astronaut scientist back in the day who was was charged with leading the mission to Mars, which was defunded by Congress. But I do remember in my living room in London many, many years ago, Brian regaling me with the story of when he had been contacted by the Japanese space program because they had been jointly funding the Saturn probe mission, if you recall that. And the Japanese live feeds coming in simultaneous to the NASA feeds were able to see in real time what was transpiring through the lens of the probe. And what they saw was alien craft, many hundreds of miles long, mining the rings of Saturn. And the Japanese were then told by the Americans to zip it up. And they were deeply offended because they had jointly financed the mission and essentially said, no, get stuffed. We are going to bring disclosure.
Yes.
We're going to bring disclosure to our people. Well, that began some really dastardly internecine wars, which many tether all the way to Fukushima and the auto-destruction of the Japanese economy through those seismic weapons and the whole Fukushima shit show that emerged was connected to that narrative. But the point I'm trying to make here, by remembering Brian O'Leary and remembering the Saturn probe and the fact that, 2 decades ago plus, we had these epochal totems known to us. We had the information, but of course the information at that time was heavily sequestered in the military intelligence basement and the space program basement. And that never got across to humanity. We were not able to read those signs, begin to assimilate what it means to the gestalt that we have these neighboring entities that are hundreds of miles long. So it's also almost redolent to me of that story, that this tremendous epochal event now coming earthbound or inward bound toward us, it's almost as though this is forcing itself to be seen, to be heard, to be known, to be felt by the mainstream. And it's no longer something coverable, upperable by those usual Sabbatean elements. Michael, what are your thoughts on that?
Could I interject something really quickly having to do with timelines? Going back to 1999 on the East Coast, I had a remarkable 7-hour meeting with a man who was retiring from the Defense Intelligence Agency, and his colleague with him was also in intelligence, but did a lot of work for the World Bank. And in those 7 hours, they were talking to me about what they knew of extraterrestrial layers geophysically, layers atmospherically through the solar system of different types of ETs, where they are based, what we knew, and a big picture. And at one point, they stopped and said, there is a very important timeline that is going to be coming. And they said it's between 2020 and 2025. And that by the end of the year of 2025, we don't know what Earth will look like. I've never forgotten those words. Today in 2025, when I saw the first image of the blue and that of the blue Kachina of the Hopi, which are the peaceful aspects of this, those words from those two men to me in 1999 in Washington came back, and I thought, my God, what if what's coming is related to what they said by 2020 to 2025, there was going to be much destruction. And fortunately, we haven't had a lot of geophysical destruction at this point, but we're having all kinds of chaos in the atmosphere and the earth? And what if it keeps evolving? And what if 2025 not only was the year that Edgar Casey pointed out as October 29th, 2025, being a date of some kind of huge interaction with the universe, that it may be that we have hit 2025 to 2030, that this will be the 5 years.
Yes.
Everything we're talking about, all of it.
Yes.
Linda,
Good.
you just made an important point. The 29th is also the perihelion of three ions. It's closest
Yes,
point
it
to the
is.
sun. And if
It is
Casey
the
nailed
perihelion.
it that far from the past,
Yeah.
and that's where my 591 position is within a few days. With this, I tell you, this gets way deeper than what I presented here so far today. And I'm so glad Linda's here to bring up. I've been getting goosebumps on my arms on her October 29th because you have perihelion and my 591, which
Yeah.
yeah.
What do you personally think, or Grok, or all of you, about the significance of 2030 as an endpoint?
So let's discuss that, Linda. I want to bring Michael in briefly to touch on the earlier dialogue, and then we'll move on.
Sure. Well, I think what you said, Sasha, about that story about evidence of artificial structures in the orbit of Saturn, and how the Japanese were blocked from releasing that, and there was a struggle, internecine struggle. I think that's mirrored in what I have seen in US history when it comes to disclosure of extraterrestrial life. There's always been this internecine battle between those that are pro-disclosure and those that are against disclosure. And I think what is happening now with this passage of Three Eye Atlas is a way of making disclosure happen without it being blocked, because there are just so many amateur astronomers out there with telescopes that are charting the path of Three Eye Atlas, and of course mainstream astronomers as well. So if they are guiding it, as I think the double-blind remote viewing confirms, and as other sources confirm, that this is being guided on its path, that we can expect course trajectories changing. That's going to make it clear that this is a extraterrestrial or some kind of spacecraft, whether it's extraterrestrial or whether it's a human craft belonging to Solar Warden. That, I guess, we'll find out in the future. But I think this is a wonderful way of ensuring that we move forward with disclosure without the, whatever you call them, the black hats, the dark hats, the cabal, deep state blocking it.
So this is an interesting slide, isn't it? Baba Vanga also predicted this and then correlated massive alien ship larger than Manhattan could hit Earth this November. To Linda's question about 2030, I know that Lazarus members will remember that I spent over the last couple of years a fair bit of time with, let me just put it this way, the individual with what appears to be the biggest private collection of alien artifacts anywhere in the world. And I have covertly filmed some of that evidence, those artifacts, including the alien skulls with the eggs in the womb and all the rest of it, was then told in no uncertain terms by intelligence to strip that off the web, which we did. I tried to then put it just into the members only, and again told strip it off. Now that was a year ago. I even took, let me just put it this way, members of the Trump family to go and meet that individual privately and to observe that private artifact collection. So this whole business of sequestering these artifacts comes to my mind in the person of the individual who owns that private collection, who is a wonderful, godly, I would say almost angelic being, who has been serially abducted in the benevolent sense for 49 years, since he was 11 years of age. He must now be 61, 62. And he told me about a year ago, when we were sitting down, I've been to visit him multiple times in Central America, where he lives behind a bit of a gated fortress, it has to be said. And he informed me that the last time he had his Star Nation friends come to him, they arrived shortly after midnight at his home. And he described the female as being in control. He'd known them for almost half a century. They'd never aged or dated. The female was some Star Nation being, incredibly kind and benevolent. And next to her was a masculine entity that was part android. It was part robotic. It was incredibly strong, powerful, and was there as a protector of the feminine entity. And they took him about an hour's drive. They asked if they could get into his vehicle with him. Took him for an hour's drive outside the city where he lives. I'm not going to name it. It's in Central America. And drove around a hillside. And he remembered that that was the same hillside that he was driving around in the back of his mother's car when he was 11 years old with his brother and his mother in the car. It was the same hill. It was the same road. And 50 years ago, he had been abducted out of that, or taken out of that car. Time had frozen. That had been his first engagement with the ETs, the Star Nation people. Now, half a century later, he was taken to the same spot in his own vehicle driving. And as he drove around the hill, it was now early hours of the morning, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, he saw an alien, a UFO, a beautiful lit UFO. He said to me, Sasha, it was a bit kind of Star Trek-y. It was a bit of a Toys R Us UFO. But he said, I asked my beloved friends, what are we doing here? And they said, this is a gift for you. You've always wanted to fly one of these ships, and now's your chance. And he jumped in. He said, as he entered into the ship, it felt as though he was forcing himself into a kind of aerated gel. And he panicked momentarily, and they said, don't panic, just force yourself in. It'll infuse your body, your biome will be completely infused and protected, and you'll be able to travel at warp speeds, whatever. He got into the craft, was able to navigate it, and they said to him, you can go anywhere in the cosmos that you choose. This is our gift to you. And he sat and he said, I want to go to Miami. And they laughed and they said, are you quite serious? He said, I've always wanted to go to Miami, but I'm prohibited from going to the United States. And my best childhood friend immigrated there and lives in Miami, and I would love to go to Miami. So they said, fair enough. And then they said, oh, one moment. No, we have a treaty with the US authorities. We're not allowed actually to go into the US. We've agreed to that. But we'll shirk the treaty, but it's got to be in under 85 seconds. So we can go and we're out under 85 seconds. He agreed. They said, set your intention to where you want to go. And he was just thinking of his friend in Miami. Boom! And he said to them, when are we going? And they said, you're already there. He looked out the window, saw the apartment block of his friend in Miami, which he recognized. And his friend was doing dishes in the kitchen. And he ran across the lawn, tapped on the window, hugged his friend, had about 60 seconds with him, ran back to the craft, and boom, they were back in Central America at the base camp. He was then driven home. He drove the ET friends home, and at his doorstep, they said to him, well, he said, why did you give me this gift after all these years? What was that about? And they said, because this is the last time you're going to see us.
Oh.
He said he broke down. He'd become so friendly over the years with them. And they said, we will be back. And Linda, it corresponds with the 2030 dateline. So this was a few years ago when he had the last encounter with them. And 2030 was clearly designated as dateline 0. And then 2032 was explained at that time to my friend that we would be fully inducted into the cosmic symphony of galactic intelligence, so to speak. I don't know if that helps the math of your 2030 dateline, but let's ask David Sereda what he thinks.
Could I add one fast thing? It has been stressed to me by people who have worked inside of JSOC and aerospace that beings like the tall whites, as an example, they are not using propulsion systems as we think of them, that they literally do not move through space, that they manipulate time by frequency areas. Vast computers are moving them. It can be from one end of the universe to the other in a second, because they are not moving through matter or what we think of. They are literally resonating with frequency points that the computers do in a parallel with manipulating time.
Yes.
Time, frequencies, and in seconds, they're 55 light years. And I have come to feel now that is a true description of the technology that is out there, even if I don't understand it further.
Beautiful. David.
Okay, I'm going to show you something to confirm what you're saying, because where is 3i Atlas going to be in 2030? Watch this. So it sent us another message. I got this from Loeb. So let me just share screen. I'm just going to show you my calculator, which is not there. So I have to pick it up right here. So now share my calculator. So what it did, its rotational axis was 16.16 hours. Watch this. It's going to blow your mind. 16 point, that's rotating on its axis times, I'm going to break this down in minutes. That's the age of Methuselah, 969 years. Now watch this, times 1.61803398887. I'm going to go all the way to Nibiru. You're not going to believe how this works. Keep going. That's asteroid Ceres. That's Jupiter almost. That's almost 100% of Saturn's orbit, 99.4. And I'm going to keep going, keep going, keep going. I know the number I'm looking for. You'll see it in a. That's it. That's Nibiru. Watch. Divided by, that's in days, so I'm going to change this to years. Divided by 365.256. Bingo. Sitchin said Nibiru had an orbit of approximately 3,600 years from Mayan, Babylonian, Sumerian data. That's 3,620. That's incredibly accurate. So what you do next is you realize that it just sent us a message on its rotational axis period in minutes, which multiplied by the golden ratio took me to extremely high accuracy for Saturn. Did you know that now Loeb has brought up antimatter. The most antimatter we know of in the solar system is in Saturn's magnetic field, by the way. And he brought up a theory on his blog, on his Medium, that the 3i Atlas might be using antimatter or emitting antimatter. So I know a lot about antimatter. It could be the next propulsion system energy, the most powerful weapon. It's something we've barely begun to understand how to harness and stabilize, because when antimatter and matter meet up, they annihilate, and there's very bright gamma emissions, which could explain the luminosity coming off the surface of it, right? Because it has its own luminosity. So that's where Loeb got into antimatter. So how did its rotational period produce a number to the golden ratio that did that? It's communicating, is what I'm saying. I'm watching everything it's doing. But it also gave us a number, which is in my model, which, Sasha, we have shown on the show many, many times, which is this, which is my, I'm going to show this really quickly, my hyperdimensional solar system model, which, John, you'll have to you'll understand this with Bode's law, that if you start with the number 591 right here, which is the number of days after my wife died that she called out my name and she told me to divide it, multiply by the golden ratio. If you do this, you don't need Bode's law. You will see these hyperdimensional numbers. Divided by the golden ratio, you'll get Earth, then Venus, and then you'll get this 139,516 number here, which resolves the miracle of the Son of Fatima, St. Francis's Ascension Day, the Buddha's birthday also. And I keep going, I'll get Mercury, and I'll get all these numbers that will lead me to the height of the Great Pyramid of Egypt perfectly. Times the golden ratio. See how I'm going above the line, below, above, below, above, below. These numbers above are days in Earth time for 9 upper planets which are balanced with the golden ratio with my 9 lower spheres, and that's counting the sun. So why is that? It's that way because the ancient Egyptians actually documented what was called the Aeneid, which is the 9. They had an upper 9 and a lower 9. And the yogis of India describe these upper planets, lokas, as being planets of the enlightened beings, like Christian loka, Hiranya loka, planets of supreme bliss and enlightenment, but they're invisible to us. So the number in the rotational axis period of Methuselah's age is in my chart, but it's not visible to us. We have UFOs, UAPs coming in and out of interdimensional space, and we have to now graduate to the understanding that it's a golden ʻOumuamua, Borisov, 21 Borisov, and 3i Atlas are 1 to the golden ratio squared apart in time at perihelion. Perfect. So then it's bullseye 591 divided by the golden ratio and times the golden ratio builds this huge model. And by the way, John, I resolved the problem with Neptune's orbit. It's I'll have to share it with you because it's mathematics.
Sure.
I figured it out. Yeah.
Very good. Well, let me actually, I want to bring John in here because I wanted to just ask John to break it down for the audience. Does authority combined with JWST's deliberately low resolution imaging suggest that authorities are managing this discovery as a crisis level secret? Yeah.
Yes.
I agree with Linda.
Okay.
I think that I worked for 10 years in nuclear weapons labs, and not on nuclear weapons, but on fusion energy and directed energy weapons. And we went through 2 sort of secret crises where, after 83, we worked inside a big security fence. We couldn't talk about what we knew was going on, and morale collapsed in the staff of the scientific staff because they felt we were close to a nuclear war. We were closer to a nuclear war than we were during the Cuban Missile Crisis, but nobody outside the fence knew it. I wanted to speak, and also going back to Michael bringing this up, yes, it appears that the government is going through a secret crisis about this matter. You may have noticed this. Well, of course, they just released this new order for all NASA. They're locking down NASA for national security now, and I myself believe that it is because of 3i Atlas. You may have noticed that since July 1st, when 3i Atlas was discovered, we've had all of this diplomatic activity. Donald Trump suddenly met with Putin, and they tell there's insiders who say that meeting was not about working together to face a common, what could be a common threat. Then, of course, that was followed by this massive summit at the White House within a few days. Everyone in the Western Alliance dropped everything they were doing and came to Washington, D.C. Then Tulsi Gabbard talked about evidence of ETs. She's the the Defense Intelligence Chief, and then also Congressman Luna. And I thought, just like Linda, I thought, what could be more reassuring than these confident women coming on and saying, "Oh yes, we've seen evidence for extraterrestrial intelligence," and doing it in such a charming way that it reassures everyone. So here's another problem, by the way. You may have also noticed they moved the National Guard into Washington, D.C.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, that's another aspect of this possible, what I believe is a secret crisis. There's a faction, of course, in the secret government that doesn't want disclosure under any circumstances because their power within the government is based on the secret.
Yes, it is. And the
secret, that's their job. And so if disclosure happens, they lose their power. And I wrote a novel, Linda is aware of it, called Morning Star Pass, The Collapse of the UFO Cover-Up, where, in fact, two women journalists, inspired by Linda's good example, bring down the UFO cover-up. And in the process, the secret government decides to try and take over the public government. And the response, one of the women calls the National Guard from, the governor of Maryland, and he sends the National Guard, and they guard the Congress during this process so that they can't, the secret government cannot perform a coup d'etat. So it's a very dramatic novel, but disclosure for some people in the secret government is almost doomsday.
Indeed.
As far as
Indeed. I'm going to bring Michael in here. Michael, how might predictive programming around Atlas and its interpretation tie into global power dynamics? And could this anomaly be influencing human decision making at an unseen level?
I think there is definitely some connection. And I mean, when Linda kind of brought up that Edgar Casey prophecy about some light around October 27, as I recall, of this year.
October 29th.
October 29th, thank you. What that brings to mind is another Edgar Casey prophecy, which was that Russia would be the hope of the world in the future, in a post-communist Russia.
Yes.
And so you look at a event that Russia is fighting a proxy war against, it's not just NATO that is supporting the Ukrainians. It is this kind of dark cabal that really wanted to destroy Russia using Ukraine as the mechanism for doing that. But Russia is succeeding in defeating that on the battlefield. And you have something similar happening in the US at a kind of national level with the whole Trump versus the deep state struggle. And if you look at their recent meeting in Alaska, I totally agree with John that it had much more to do with some of these kind of like secret exopolitical developments around the world. And literally what is happening right now is the deep state, the US, but the world for decades, if not centuries, through compromised politicians and so forth, are being defeated. And I think the timing of 3i Atlas and what David has been telling us, all these incredible dates as it passes orbits and near planets, does suggest that what we're unfolding now, that there is a profound disclosure event, which is more than just revealing the existence of extraterrestrial life. It's liberation of our planet from this very dark force, which has been oppressing it for decades and centuries. And I think
I'd like to just
that's what's happening.
Beautiful. And I'd like to add to that, Linda, before I bring you in.
I just want to put something in really fast. The source of mine said, get ready to watch the Kabuki Theater. And another person told me, I can't prove it, but I think it's worth contributing right now, that the Elon Musk, Donald Trump so-called fight was on purpose.
Yes.
They had to separate themselves out. They did not want any strategy on either side of those two men to leak. And so this alleged fight was created.
Beautiful. Well, just to speak to the grand archetypal language going on here, which is really my shtick in the private lectures that I do around the world. 3-4 hour talks are really focused on this perennial dialectic between the dance of Shiva and Shakti, between the forces of heaven and hell, light and dark, and how that cascades into closer and closer into our perceived reality framing. So we have the archaeocosmological mythos of the Enkis and the Enlils, of the angry, jealous gods of old versus the immanent flame of the Magdalene and the Christic. And we've got the Enki and Lil, we've got the Cain and Abel, which is a very important one for us to consider here, and how Cain and Abel, snake blood and bird blood, essentially transmogrifies into our reality historical framing as the Khazarians and the Tartarians. So when you see the Donald Trumps and the Elon Musks and the Vladimir Putins of this world, when you really conduct the study, these are the Tartarians in that sense, very closely akin to Nikola Tesla, arguably the last of the extant Tartarians, carrying many of those codes into the last century, versus the Khazarian Sabbatean agenda, which of course is the transponding technology, human technology, to those highly diabolical and demonic entities. And the Luciferian versus the Satanic, in a sense, becomes the most to make a distinction between the Luciferic and the Satanic. They are not the same thing. In fact, they are polar opposites to a great extent. And it comes down, as I have learned through taking hundreds of testimonies to the International Tribunal, the Judicial Commission of Inquiry, which we did into human trafficking, ritual satanic abuse, and then on to greater subjects like the weaponization of the biosphere, and those hundreds of seatings which we did, also taking the test, why is the biosphere being weaponized? Why is human mRNA DNA being interceded and weaponized at that nano level? What is the real story? This interventionist, third-party interventionism, the distinction between the Luciferic and Donald Trump are on the Luciferic side of the equation, the fallen angel, the Lucis flame, it's still connected to power and dominion and money and control, but they are not seeking the desecration of God's kingdom, of God's creatures. Quite the opposite. They still seek to protect and preserve in the truest tradition of divine right to rule. But the Satanic, involved in blood rites, blood ritualism, adrenal chrome harvesting, all of that stuff is a very, very different aspect of that grand dialectic.
Watch what I'm going to show you now. I, of course, used to be a professional photographer for over 30 years. I took the image of 3i Atlas from the Hawaiian telescope, and you're not going to believe what I got. So, upper right corner is what it really looks like with the colors separated. Notice it looks 3i, third eye Atlas. And you can see
Yeah.
This is what it looks like.
Isn't that an odd coincidence?
And I can show you how I evolved to this image, right? So remember, actually, the word heaven in the New Testament comes from the original Greek, which is Uranos, right? And Uranos is the god who creates the Cyclops. He creates the Titans, who cohabit with Gaia to create the Olympians, who then create the humans, something like that. So you can see is what we know from the photography, from the color, when you separate all the noise, which is what I did. It looks like the eye of Horus, the all-seeing eye of God. And then in the black and white, stunningly, we can see geometries around the eye that are polygonal, pentagonal, hexagonal. They're a little bit blurry in the black and white from the Hubble imagery. I'll try and pull one up for you here. But basically what we have is an eye, and it's titled 3i Atlas, being the Greek god, holding up the world. I think they know, and as far as the imagery goes, okay, here's the image that I started with. I just want you to see this so that you know where I got that from. Let me share screen again. This is the image I started with. So inside a photograph is data. And what I know, even with the face on Mars, is if you reduce the contrast, it looks very soft and fuzzy like this. This looks intentionally reduced as contrast. Intentionally. So this is what I started with, but in the data, if you clean it up, is geometric structure, definitely where you can see. Let me look for some of my black and white images. Oh yeah, here we go. Here's one right here. Okay, this is from the Hubble in black and white. So let me pull this up. And this is where you're going to see the geometry expanding beyond the actual eye. So this thing is so sophisticated. I love the black and white because the black and white bands are going to be more, you can see polygonal structure and angles in this Hubble image. Lots of red, but I can see it with a trained eye very well, which is extending beyond the eye. Now, these images are from the 21st or so of July. It's very interesting that all of our last images are at Sirius helical rising, which is July 19th to the 22nd, and the Apollo was July 19th and 20th back in 1969. So
okay.
we have images of structure. With the blackout on really good photography, I think they have fun with this. And far as yeah.
Very good.
I'll just interject something.
Yes.
It is typical of the government when it's starting to encounter things that it doesn't want to discuss, is you will have sort of data blackouts. They had a lot of James Webb's Space Telescope pictures, and they did a data embargo on them. They wouldn't release anything for several weeks, and now they're starting to release things. I also wanted to mention, and of course, all of this is accompanied the 3i Atlas, but the diplomatic activity, they coincided with the National Guard. The meeting with Putin and Trump coincided with the National Guard being being moved into Washington D.C.
Yes.
Almost fifth coup d'état, deterrence of a coup d'état while he was in Alaska. So we may be getting into a problem where we have a public government with a public constitution, and then we have a secret government with its own set of rules, and the two, there's going to be a struggle between those two entities, and of course I believe the public constitution will win, but it's the center now of the secret government in this country now is apparently the UFO cover-up.
Indeed.
And
Forgive me, we're winding toward the end of this segment, and I wanted to, as we approach closing comments, I just wanted to ask Michael, are there patterns in government handling of interstellar anomalies that suggest a deliberate agenda to control disclosure, and how does Atlas fit into that narrative?
Well, it's very interesting that you had in 2017, you had the beginning of the UFO issue being taken seriously when the New York Times and Politico published articles, and 2027, which is the year that John Ramirez and others have identified as being the culmination of this kind of decade of preparation for disclosure, and of course 2027 is when 3 to those outer planets. And so I think that there is some kind of timetable that is unfolding here. And personally, I think this kind of period that we're entering into, like this October 29, 2025, that I think actually does have a lot of significance if we bring in the Casey prophecies going. We will actually be not just dealing with the disclosure of extraterrestrial life, we will be dealing with the collapse of the deep state, the Satanists that have been running the show for duration, not just for the planet, but for the entire galaxy. So I imagine we're going to be really in this next 2 years kind of witnessing some incredible events, and I'm optimistic that by the latter stages of that period, by 2027, that the kind of exposed and defeated, and then we will have open interaction with extraterrestrials, and it'll usher in a new galactic age.
Beautifully stated. Thank you.
Yes.
John, I want to get your closing comments, your takeaway on the significance of this extraordinary galactic phenomenon which we're about to intercept with.
I tend to agree with Michael that we're going to go through a period of it's going to be a roller coaster ride. I'm sorry, these things never, for one thing, powerful entities never give up power willingly. And so we could have a intense struggle between the public constitutional government and the secret government over the next few years. But I believe that the net effect of 3I Atlas and ʻOumuamua, its earlier one, is to hasten disclosure by the public government. And I think that is, as it says in the Bible, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. We will have a restoration of a government by the people, for the people in this country, and generally in the whole world. So I am optimistic, but at the same time, we must brace ourselves maybe for some turbulent events. And but anyway, I think, in fact, I think this show is an important milestone itself.
Thank you. Beautiful, John. Beautifully stated. David, your closing comments here. This cosmic motif, apocalypse or ascension, where does it take us?
Well, I'm going to show you on Avi Loeb's actual page, and I find this quote by him astounding. And that is that Loeb is saying here, from the new data from James Webb, it is actually about 29 miles in diameter in size, which is 46 kilometers, 20 to 29. And that Loeb is saying, based on the CO2 emissions, if those are representative of organic beings, we exhale CO2, we breathe in oxygen, that would be accompanied by as many as 10 million persons, assuming they're the size of us. This is actually his data. So for Loeb to say that, I mean, I really appreciate him. I mean, I know he can't go as far as I can go with religious states, but I gotta say he is immensely courageous and to give us the data he's given us. And if you go to his Medium blog and follow him, and you go to my Medium blog, you'll see my data presented much more precisely. I just gotta, give. I know he's in a world where he's not allowed to do certain things, or he could risk losing funding.
Yes.
But he's giving us clues, and the CO2 data and the new size of it, it's enormous. It's the size of a city, and if you multiply that by all of its dimensions, it's bigger than any city on Earth. And you think of, in closing, the end of the Book of Revelation in the cubic New Jerusalem landing upon the Earth. I've done some new math on that one too. I mean, it's put at approximately 13 to 1500 miles cubed. If you sat that on the Earth, John, you know what would happen to the orbit of the Earth. It would destroy it. You just have to look at the way it's written.
As I remember, it doesn't actually come and rest on the Earth. It's more, it floats around near the Earth. But yes, your points are well taken. I was going to mention the odd coincidence that the object, now they're talking about it being roughly the size of the moon Phobos that orbits Mars already. Again, another, it's like a big finger pointing us towards Mars.
There's way more on Mars than I have, way more.
Yes,
well, I suspect we're going to take the conversation further. Let me bring in Linda here in closing. Linda, you've got the floor. What does 3i Atlas most urgently teach us about the cosmos? What should we, as a peoples of the world, take away from this anomaly, and how might it reshape science, consciousness, and our sense of, I guess, cosmic responsibility?
It was about 10 years ago that I received in the mail a thick package of illustrations, color, black and white, some photos from, he was a military guy who wanted me to know that he was also an abductee, and he wanted me to see what it was that he was illustrating, but he would never do an interview even if I changed the frequency in his voice, which I have done many times in my career, and no one has ever been hurt by that. And because what he's showing me through the eyes of somebody working in sensitive military operations, some of them were from out of the earth, say up of 80,000 feet, or it's something that wasn't just an airplane, but high enough to look down. And the illustrations were showing various aspects of our planet with round objects on the oceans. And when I finally was able to talk with this person about what are the round objects, he said, by 2030, the world will have started changing so rapidly that I was shown there will be whole cities that will be made with the help of ETs on round apparatus to float on the oceans because of the problems that there will be in the land. And until today, I have that file somewhere. I've wondered about that often. Occasionally, an abductee will say, I have been taken someplace and I'm looking down on an island, or I'm looking down at something but it's so round and it's floating on the oceans. It's been a thread that has come through the last 10 to 15 years without my understanding. Today, for the first time, it just occurred to me. What if that is what has to come next, is to get some of the human population of this planet out onto the oceans, where it might end up being safer to be than in some of the flooding mountainous areas. So all of this is coming down to, again, 2025 to 2030 with a mystery about what comes next. Maybe we're going to get some insight from 3i Atlas.
Beautiful. Thank you, Linda. Well, friends, what to say? 3i Atlas challenges every single assumption about intelligence, design, and our place in the universe. It's not simply a visitor, but a messenger. That much is clear. A mirror and, in that sense, a trial. Its path, chemistry, and subtle harmonics offer us guidance if we're willing to see and interpret that guidance. And it does come back down to the perennial quanta of love versus fear, and what we choose to anchor as the source code of how we interpret reality. reality, and how we thereby project cosmogenetically and epigenetically through the fractal antenna of our DNA, broadcast into the field of reality, whatever the outcome is. And clearly we are making that bifurcation choice at the collective dreaming level. It seems to me that we've already transmuted the most baseline frequency sets at that level. I would invite all living men and women of the living soil to plant your feet squarely as the Adamite in that sense to the living soil. Look to the heavens and never, ever make the mistake of apprehending any phenomenon with fear whatsoever. That to me is the takeaway, because how we group dream now and wise dream at the collective level becomes the manifest reality. I'd like to thank John Brandenburg, Professor.
It's a pleasure and an honor to be on this show.
So wonderful meeting you, John, and Dr. Michael Salla, who we love greatly. And Michael, you're under instruction to get very, very well. As I said, you're looking fantastic. I know
you are looking well.
You've had some trials, but you're looking beautiful. David Sereda, thank you, brother. And Linda Moulton-Howe, thank you so very much for coming on.
Yes,
Lazarus
Linda.
Such a delight.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Sasha.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you. Bye.
Great being.
Thank you, friends. God bless you. God bless you. Okay. All right, friends. There we have it. About the most significant lineup we could have had to interpret these galactic storylines and mythic storylines, all, it would seem, converging in the now into something epochal, which, as I said, we can determine how to view this stuff. We could we could collectively move into a morphogenetic entropic spiral of fear, and we will manifest negative outcomes. That much we should have learned reincarnationally. We should have learned, each of us should have learned that by now. But here we are, and we're looking at this with an affirmative stance, knowing that whatever we're reading in the stars is intended for us. We are immensely important. The resurrection of the angelic genome is palpably underway to those of us who take our attention away from the pornography of trivia for long enough and do not get subverted, distorted, or to use a street name, mind-fucked into believing the lies, the dream spell, and the spell bonding and binding that governments and monotheistic religiosity and billboards and TikTok present to us. It comes down to the alpha and the omega, always comes down to the quintessence of who you are, who you be in the living geometry of the living moment. And if you're conducting right action and you're standing in pure truth, which is to say fearlessness, which is to say grace and a state of witness, simply behold what you behold, but do not identify with the movement of that thing. Witness it and see the world through the eyes of a child. We're all of us, in that sense, divinely ordained, divinely anointed, divinely protected. I'm going to bring on next George H. Lewis to give us his reading of the stars. This man, Laura Eisenhower and Chief Sabrina Whitehorse Barnett, my beloved sisters, agree is the greatest man out there reading the stars. Certainly, I've fallen very much in love with this man's mind, and I'm very, very happy to bring him on today. I have a problem with my split screen here, so Christy, you might have to help me. George, there you are. Happy to see you.
Lovely, lovely to be here, Sasha. Thank you for having me onto your ship. I mean, it's interesting. You're oozing the Piscean archetype, not just me.
I'm not a Piscean.
Are you?
I'm not a Piscean.
No, I know. I mean, that's what I love about you. I have no idea what your astrology is, but you're embodying the archetype. You know, you're dressed as a captain of the ship. You were last night waxing lyrical about diving into the lake and losing oneself. I mean, that is totally the North Node in Pisces, and I think, you know, I mean, there's so much to share today. All the outer planets are, as of a few hours' time, Saturn goes retrograde, move backwards. And it's like we're in this massive revision time for the next 3, 4, 5 months. And really, it's the spring next year where everything is active at the beginning of the zodiac signs, and that's when really the new Earth becomes very visible. And if you look at it through the numerology, we are in a closing year. 2025, you add that up, it's a 9. It's closures. And so we're all having to wrap up our old business, our old relationships. We're having to really go inward. That's what the retrograde outer planets behoove us to do. And so when you see the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which is certainly playing out because it dances at that 0 point of Aries now and back into Pisces, they hover in the late Pisces, the anaretic degree, which is 29 degrees of Pisces, until the spring next year. And then it's fully active, well, from February, March. And it's almost like Saturn, I've said this before to you guys, Saturn's at his absolute weakest at this part of the zodiac. And Saturn is structure. The law of structure is the law of time, chronos in the Greek. And so what we're seeing is Saturn, which is the Babylonian structure, the Saturnian matrix. Even when he dips back into Pisces, he doesn't like to be in water, Piscean water. He doesn't know how to, he can't float very well. And then when he moves back into Aries, he's burnt up. And the fact that Neptune's conjunct Saturn at the beginning of Aries, which will play out in particular in the spring next year, that hasn't happened for thousands and thousands of years. So we're talking about an epochal change. And it's not even, it's actually kind of bigger in my understanding of when we shifted from the age of Aries into Pisces 2,200 years ago. And what we've learned through history, and I'm very skeptical of what we've been taught about in history, as we all are becoming, is something bigger. And in a way, this is where I would, lean on the Dr. Sallas and Laura and all the galactic personnel, because this is a galactic. And that makes me come back to the disclosure, and you mentioned it yesterday, and obviously with these amazing contributors earlier, the 3i Atlas.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting, isn't it, Sasha, when you look up Atlas, obviously we use it as a term regarding maps and drawings, but in the myth, he represents the vastness of the world and the idea of carrying knowledge. So Atlas myth, not only is the burden of responsibility, and of course he's punished to hold up the heavens for eternity after the Titan monarchy. That's the Titan monarchy is the war that was fought to decide which generation of gods would have dominion over the universe. And of course, it ended with the victory of what we call the Olympians, the Zeus, Jupiter, and his whole entourage. And in a way, isn't this the Nephilim? Isn't this the Anunnaki? Isn't this, why were all the, I'm an artist. I've just been in Rome. I'm now in Tuscany. Why are all the hands of all those beautiful marble sculptures all cut off? And I think we know why, because they had 6 fingers.
Ah, interesting.
Interesting, isn't it? And I may just put this together. I'm sure others have too. They're all cut off because they are part of the Nephilim, or whatever we describe them. They're part of that higher Titanopic order. And yes, the Atlas, the 3i Atlas, is behooving us to look upwards and to have a cosmic understanding of our story, his story, his
yes, and look at how mainstream media couch it.
Yeah.
Obviously they go in this direction, right?
Totally. So I think you said yesterday in that lovely post you put up about shamanistic death and rebirth. Absolutely. How do we roll into that? How do we allow those ancient codes to come in? And this is where the astrology is interesting with the North Node in Aries, because it actually asks us about the 4 stages of water.
Yes.
Not just the physical, not just the gas, and not just the solid liquid gas, but actually that plasma, hyperdimensional physics. I think you spoke about sort of the energy science or whatever it is, and how do we go now truly beyond that temporal Newtonian Cartesian? I think therefore I am nonsense.
Yes. Yes.
And go and really into something which is quantum, which is time travel. And that's where I get excited and goosebumpy with the Q and Indigo Lockwood and Baron Trump, because I have faith. It's nothing to do with belief. Faith is something, isn't it?
So let me just say to the audience here that this is our first cosmic intel roundup that we're going to be doing at every Lazarus. And this, again, is a popular demand thing. George Lewis is going to be joining us, and we're going to be trying to, in a sense, summarize and bring everything into sharp focus as a cosmic intel monthly astrology report in simple terms. And this month and right now, for the next few minutes, we're going to be diving into the journey from August's Lionsgate portal to September's awakening, and the triggers that we've been seeing, not least of which is, Three-Eye Atlas incoming. But think of this as your cosmic roadmap for the month ahead, and who better to guide us, of course, than George H. Lewis. And George is a visionary artist, let alone an astrologist and a speaker who blends astrology, spirituality, and ancient wisdom to illuminate the deeper patterns which shape our world. What is Lionsgate, and why is Lionsgate so significant?
Well, I find Lionsgate absolutely fascinating because Lionsgate lines up with our dual star, twin star of Sirius A. And what I find so interesting, which I don't think many astrologers speak about, cosmologists speak about, is it's connected to the signing of the Declaration of Independence of the United States back in 1776. And what I find so riveting, and I get goosebumps whenever I reflect upon it, is not only was that Constitution, was the document signed on July 4th, 1776, when we had Jupiter and Venus conjoined. Jupiter and Venus are the two benefics. Yeah. Jupiter expands, it's truthful, it's visionary, and Venus is relational. And I mean, the Venus codes for me are so interesting, and the beauty of Venus. I mean, the aesthetics, beauty is harmonics, and it's so important for us souls to get back to Venus, real beauty, soul beauty, and we need to start building cities. I mean, I put this out here today. I would love to be given a mandate to select the right architects, to give me a piece of land in North Carolina.
Oh, and please, we are the greatest architects. Yeah. New Earth, what we're doing and building here in Mexico and in Africa, and now in multiple locations in Asia going online, which we'll be announcing. But yeah, this is a resurrection of the Tatarian in a sense, inviting the heavens through the dielectric antennas in and through the paramagnetic antennas embedded into the earth to activate the plasma charge inside the living environment. You're absolutely right. Talk to me about architecture, bioarchitecture, spatial harmonics, spatial dynamics. What the devil else should we be talking about in this world? We should be embodying and acting and manifesting this new earth in real time.
Yeah, I mean, so, there's so much, because just to finish off with the Jupiter-Venus conjunction over the birth chart of the United States, it's also conjoined Sirius. And so this is so powerful, and it's kind of new Atlantis for me. I mean, it's one of the things why I'm sort of desperate to go to the Azores, because I have this sixth sense that the Azores is part of the laughter bit of Atlantis. But that's just me fantasizing. I love all this stuff you're sharing, beautiful artwork. You see, it's all watery, and there's something, and I feel with the Pleiades too, there's memory, isn't there, of the water planets like Maya. And this is the Saturn in Neptune, Saturn-Neptune conjunction playing out in Pisces and Aries. It's this whole rebirth of a whole new structure, a whole new way of being. And so the water is such a powerful thing. I mean, let me think about that is in terms of the North Node in Pisces. It is leaning more into our spiritual self. It's letting go of the logical mind, that pure data-driven self, the mental perfectionist, and moving out into that, putting on some Enya, quite frankly, open up that toroidal field that is that magnificent power of the heart. And that's when the water becomes a big part of our reality, because the new light codes are coming in and they're stimulating our DNA. And what I find interesting is that last post of Q said, what is coded in your DNA? Who put it? Why? Mankind is repressed. We will be repressed no more. It says information is knowledge, knowledge is power, and information is power. And it goes on. But it also, how do you protect your DNA? There is a war for your DNA. Protect your DNA ascension. Yep. That's what it says. Q. And it's like, wow. This is North Node in Pisces, the water. And, you know, we're more crystalline in the sense of by molecular count, we're 98% water. It's not just H2O. That's a limited perception. We're powered by H3O2, which is the fourth
Yeah.
phase of water, a living intelligent, a crystalline
Yeah.
form of water that stores light and drives energy. And I know this, I teach the sun gazing in Delos. Sadly, I can't come on your trip to Egypt this year. I would have come because I'm hosting light activation on Delos, the birthplace of Apollo, and we use water. So you listen to Victor Schoberger and other great luminaries on water, and you think, oh my gosh, this is amazing. It's all about the consciousness of water and our relationship with water, and that sacredness is what ultimately is going to power us into the new age of Aquarius.
Very good. So what is the September? What if there is a gift, a benediction that greets us in September? What does that benediction look like?
I think the benediction, I would say, the big one would be the 7th of September, where all the outer planets are retrograde, and there's long total lunar eclipse at 15 degrees Pisces. It lasts over 5 hours. Its duration of totality is about an hour and a half. That's pretty long. And lunar eclipses are like full moons, just on steroids. It's a ghastly expression, but it kind of gets the ball over the net. It signifies massive endings. And, you know, often we're going to, on a personal level, leaving old relationships that no longer serve us. And, you know, think about everyone listening, where is Pisces in your chart? You know, if it's in your 7th house, we're dealing with one-on-one relationships. If it's in your 1st house, it's self-perception and how you're seen by others. 10th house is career, 4th house could be family, mother. And so, you know, this is a powerful time of emotions, water, Pisces coming to a head. So the eclipse is also forming a square to the ascendant of the United States birth chart. The identity is being challenged. And it's 12 degrees Sagittarius, which is the natal chart of the United States, the ascendant, that's activated by the 15 degrees Pisces lunar eclipse. So we're definitely, and I think Canada and Russia are both affected by this lunar eclipse. I say get prepared for major endings. And on the 7th of September, and these, because eclipses last for up to half a year, this is a long-term thing. Now, on a collective level, the end of illusion, separation, victimization. We're coming out of victimization. Become the victor, no longer the victim. It's the end of deception in terms of drugs, big pharma, anything which is Piscean. I mean, the age of Pisces, at the end of the day, as Prince once said, this has been all about control of the soul. And we've got to see that for what the deep state has done. That I love it when Diana talked about the men in grey suits. We have to see it for what it is. And it's that realization that when we realize it, it all collapses.
So let's talk about that piece about the elemental, the Ahriman, the elemental intelligences, the chemical demon, which is now becoming so rooted in the format of perceived reality because of the transhumanizing effects of synthetic molecules. I'm talking about drugs, alcohol, psychedelics, and this pantheon of false gods dressed up as euphoria or kundalini rising, ecstasy, that an entire swathe of humanity have given themselves up to this false light and its chemically induced adherence, adulation toward the Godhead behind that light, that false light, is not the God. It is a fucking demiurge.
Yeah.
It's a godless demon which will come back and eat your fucking soul if you continue to remain attuned to it and be its servant and be act at its behest. And we're seeing this reveling, Babylonian orgiastic reveling has taken such incredible root through, I guess, the kind of technotronic violation of frequency through populist music being played, and obviously through the drugs and the alcohol. And that's not even to speak of the weaponization of the biosphere and all of those synthetic molecules and nano invasions. So we've now been fully permeated and attuned to the confluence, the satanic orchestra of the negative isotopes coming off all of these synthetic molecules, many of which people are willfully choosing to take in to themselves. How does that speak to this closing of a cycle, this generational torpor pulling and subsuming millions, hundreds of millions of people, beautiful young people who are devotees of false light, dressed up as vibral light or as the true God? How is that a reversible phenomenon, or is this simply symptomatic of a bifurcation at the end of a galactic cycle that is irretrievable in that sense? I hope you understand the subtlety of what I'm saying.
I think, Sasha, I do. I mean, you're an amazing wordsmith, but I feel your energy, so I kind of know in my soul what where your heart is. And I think it's both, because we live in polarity consciousness. There is a schism, and we are going to lose some, but I have vast faith that we will win and we will ascend. And until we make conscious that which is unconscious, we will no longer call it fate. And there's always going to be, that's Carl Jung, it's a sense of how do we get back to nature? So for me, it's very practical, actually. Even though I love all the esoteric conversation and hermetics, I walk around a lot barefoot now in nature. I understand my blood, meaning it's saline, and the sea. I start drinking salt water. I'm getting all my patients and clients to drink water with more Celtic sea salt to get the electrolytes back. I do understand. I'm beginning to understand, I should say. Of course, I'm right at the beginning. Hydration. And this is very Piscean, but it's also the activation of the Homo sapiens, the Homo Deus, the Homo maybe is a better lumens, maybe is a better way of describing it. I think you've used that. It's a sense of moving out of that old narrow bandwidth of what we considered human frequency was to something much more expansive. And I think we crack the code that way. The Saturn matrix, we almost don't fight it. We say, no, I'm barefoot on the ground. I'm going to hug a tree because I understand the piezoelectric charge. I'm actually going to bless my water. And when we start to bless it, the water carries the memory. It activates us, heals us, and it exponentially changes the society. There are enough of people like you and your team and other people doing the same thing. There are a ton of other people doing it on a micro level. This is the planetary awakening. There's no longer queen with handbag or sausage fingers on top of pyramid any longer. It's micro, as you are well attesting. And I love the fact that I can sort of dance as my sort of fairy like energy, go from one wonderful group to the other. That's just my archetype. Others want to get anchored down one place only, root it down, literally beautiful. Follow your bliss, follow your archetype, follow your truth and your authenticity, because authenticity carries a higher frequency than love. Because why? You can't actually love.
Oh, slow that down. Slow that right down. Authenticity carries a higher vibration than love. I absolutely welcome that statement. Can you drill into that?
Yeah, because I can't love unless I'm authentic. Now, if people can't deal with my authenticity, that's okay. Love, as Collier says, love them at a distance. But at the end of the day, to be authentic allows for me the capacity to love without boundaries, beyond. And I'm still right at the beginning of that expression and exploration. And I think that's part of the Christed light. I mean, you asked earlier about the Leo, and I think it's so interesting when you start to think actually about the Lion's Gate. I'll tell you what comes to mind for me is to do with the Christ energy, and the old structures are being dismantled, and in a way Christ was not ever really about the structure. He was never about recruiting followers through an organization. He was about showing us a better way, a path towards love by being authentic. So authentic. Venus is exalted in Pisces, to bring it back to the astrology. So the point here is, how can you be authentic without fear, Saturn? And so over many centuries, the men in grey suits, as Diana said, the Saturnian overlords, they've controlled and inverted and twisted the Christed message into a box, into a cube, into a control system, a brand, which comes from slavery, literally to be branded. The realm of Kronos. So with Venus now in Leo, we're asking ourselves to embody that Christed archetype. And when you do, you know, suddenly your frequency changes, your authenticity is there. You know, Jesus didn't demand to be worshipped. He asked you to follow his compassion, his humility, you know, his defiance of corruption, his mercy for those who are outcast and for those who are forgotten. It wasn't about worshipping him. It was about emulating his behavior and tuning into his light, because we are the light. You know, we turn on these bloody lights again by tuning into his frequency. We tune into our frequency. So as above, so below, the axiom of Hermes is activated. I think you once explained it in the first conversation I had with you, the Luciferian light. It's made me revisit, what does that actually mean? I still have to unpack that.
Yeah.
Because in some ways, the inversion is Lucifer, the negative. The positive is the Christ, because we're doing it for higher realms of consciousness through authentic love, because we ascend together. And I don't sit in my elite underground person and fuse fucking slaves. No, we do it together. That's why we're American, not British, philosophically, because we ascend together with our brothers and sisters.
I just queued up a video of my visit to the Lion's Gate. Can you see this? Christy, can you bring this in?
Oh, yes.
I'm just going to press play. But this was my visit to the Lion's Gate at the Mound of Nebuchadnezzar. Entering Lion's Gate. This is entering to the Lion's Gate. And this, my friends, is from the very top of the Lion's Gate, the land of Nebuchadnezzar, the place of the gods. This is it. Well, this has to be one of the most extraordinary places in the world. It's taken pretty much all day to get here, and a hell of a long time to climb to the top. But this is the Mound of the Gods, the Mountain of the Gods, Nemrut in Turkey. The most extraordinary thing, I've had a bird accompanying all the way up and all the way down. He's on a rock behind me. You can hardly see him. I'll try and get some footage of him. But it's the most extraordinary thing, because this bird is the only living creature I've seen pretty much all day. If you can see here, this is biblical, and it is biblical. This is the land of Jacob and Abraham and what have you. And behind me is the tumulus. There you go, the highest point. It's what I've just come down from. And it's billions and billions and billions and billions of shale stone, which were purportedly put there by man 2,500 years ago. I somehow doubt it, because it's not possible to my mind. And these extraordinary effigies and totems, of course, which this place is very famous for. And standing here, it really is the top of the world. It's just extraordinary. I once saw, look, my bird is still there on the rock behind me. I once saw, can you see him? Can you see him over there? I'll see if I can get a close up. But I once saw a valley as extraordinary as this in Arusha in Tanzania, actually where my mother grew up as a child. And I visited that a few years ago. But not since then have I seen such an extraordinary kind of biblical valley. I don't know if you can see it. The light is not carrying too far into the distance, but there is a lake, a vast lake. It looks like the sea over there. And it's just too precious. Not a sound. Nothing stirs here. Absolute stillness. Absolute stillness. My bird is still on the rock. I can't believe it. It's too extraordinary. In any event, I'm feeling super energized. This rock is kind of paramagnetic, dielectric. I'm going to ask Dan Winter and other geniuses to study it. Carrying a few pieces, of course, back with me. But it's got silica, because it's got kind of diamantine silica to it. When you study the rock and the light, it's got billions of little glimmering sparkles. But at the same time, it's, God knows what it is, but it comprises this extraordinary mountain of the gods. You have to go back to the time of King Nebuchadnezzar and beyond to get a kind of grip on the story behind this space. But hey, I'm here and trying to share this experience with you as best as possible. It's just too magnificent. All right, friends, over and out.
Yeah, so I wanted to share that. Excuse me for biting into our session a little bit, but it was such a mythic place. And as I was watching that, thinking about also what you're speaking to, really the trial of separation, human pursuit, human endeavor, how we're all seeking to alchemize and transmute base experience, base reality, base relationship, base everything, shadow, into the other. That is the pursuit here, is it not? We're just seeking remedy. We want to build, we want to make, we want to love, we want to laugh, we want to fuck, we want to drink and eat and feast in the right, but in the right way. In that sense, when we're standing in that crucible of our own pure truth, and why is it so difficult to find that quintessence, that source code? Is it because we are so weaponized? And we've been so, in that sense, I guess, genetically spliced and diced, and we've been cut off from source, even at that cosmogenetic level. One wonders, is that why? Was that the purpose of human life? Was that the purpose of this aspect of creation, to be cast into the void? What do the stars speak to you about in the context of the relationship, the foundational relationship between me and God Most High?
So, I mean, I definitely come on the side, though, I think that humanity has been so violently assaulted and weaponized over so long, it's very hard for anyone to have a real understanding of one's own power. It's not in our collective memory anymore. It's in our DNA, but it needs to be unlocked, reimagined. And it's happening, and this is the Great Awakening. I mean, the demiurge, as you describe, has really taken such control chemically, biologically, physically, and psychically, but it is being exposed as we rediscover these sites. As we, for example, Göbekli Tepe, they rediscovered recently the Taurus, a huge statue of Taurus, and then they walked literally 180 degrees opposite, and there was Scorpio, proving straight away that the zodiac has been extant for 12,000 years plus. And that's lovely to get across to Tom, Dick, and Sally, the skeptic, that astrology is a new invention. This is ancient. And I think where I'm very positive, to answer your question, and this is important, is if you go back to the Second World War and the Civil War and the Revolutionary War against Great Britain, there were significant squares in the cosmic weather. And squares denotes hardship, hard knocks. And we had those wars. What is quite remarkable right now is every outer planet is making an exact sextile or trine. In music, that is the equivalent of a perfect fourth or fifth, just to put it into simple terms. In the sense of there is a natural, beautiful harmonic playing out where we, the people, come what may, are being supported in this journey towards the higher realm. And because it hasn't happened for a great year, well, that's 26,000 years, that's Plato's language, whatever, 12,000 years, I don't know. And that's over to your experts. But I have memory of the fall of Atlantis, very much so. But this is what it's about now. It's the re-establishment of the new Atlantis, and America is at the forefront with Russia of that. And as I sit here in Europe, in my beloved Italy, Europeans simply do not get it. And I have compassion for that, because the food and the coffee is too good. They just don't get it. And in America, we do a bit more. And that's part of, Trump's destroying the old system, the stronghold of the deep state, the British Empire, out of DC, etc. And Americans kind of get it now, by and large. And in Europe, it's going to have to play catch up. But I'm positive, to answer your question, with the harmonics of the universe, with the sextiles and trines, we come out of it, I didn't say unscathed, because there's always going to be collateral damage, because souls are doing different journey work on personal levels. And there's always going to, we are in some form of kinetic battle. But it's a spiritual one. But the heavier spiritual lifting we do, the more focused we are, the more we are on re-establishing our biological divine connection to the divine source, and not the transhuman false light that you've described. The Homo Borg genetic pathway. We reject it, we get feet on the ground into the salt water. And that.
Let's break this down. Let's break this down for people. When we speak about authentic, you're speaking about actualized to the best of one's ability, in good faith and in earnest, with one's life stream. So we're all human, all too human. We all have our failings. But let's talk about the source code of that authenticity that you suggest quite rightly is the highest status that we can default to, is our authenticity, which to me is the Adamite. That's the feet squared in the mud, and humility to be able to, in an organic sense, we're talking about organic living. We're talking about cleaning ourselves, our lives, our minds, our bodies up sufficiently to move into that default. That's the authentic you're talking about. And when one moves into that authentic in truth, then one is able to tap in. One becomes phase coherent or conjugate with the actualized Kundalini life force or prana. And those forces move into coherence and conjugation with the divine, with the Atman. So that is how a simple, humble human being, once they clean up their act, in the simplest possible terms, that put down the bottle, just stop. Put away the pharmaceutical dependency drugs, put away the psychedelics, put away anything outside of actualized self upon which you believe yourself to be dependent, including trashy romantic novels or doom scrolling on TikTok or jacking off to pornography. Whatever it is, your foible, you must learn to train that dragon into its default, which is 0 point. It doesn't actually exist. It only exists so long as we allow it to parasite off the abnegated and abdicated life force or Kundalini, right?
I love this. The other thing is this strange polarity dance we must do between clearing up the human field, and water is the alpha and the omega. Because when we put structured water, when we put water that is energized through solar purity, through the moss and the deep wells of ancient water into our body, like the water I drank, I got my students in the pyramids of Bosnia last year to drink the water under the pyramid. We did it for 2 days. My hydration levels were off the chart, and I have not experienced that in this life so far. Of course, they don't allow you to take the water outside the pyramid. The state has got very controlling. We all know that.
Yes.
we have to clean up this. And when we can clean up this, we're going to be then more able to access authenticity, because the body's going to support it, because the frequency is conducive to eternus, the eternal child. And Christ spoke about this. It's in the New Testament. Is authenticity is tied to being you, intrinsically you, the eternal child. You know, in some ways, it's the sun card in the tarot with the naked boy or the girl on the back of the horse with the sun on his back. He's warm and he's just there in that beautiful expression. I'm me, and I'm not trying to be fit in with someone else. You know, I'm also not trying to be the narcissist. You see, this is the balance and that sweet spot. And it's that, but to be authentic is the ability then to step into love and real relationships and enjoyment.
Beautiful. George, I think that rounds up our beautiful little cosmic report. So we're moving into kind of meta planetary psychology as well.
Love it. I mean, I always learn so much when I'm with you, though, and it's such a pleasure to share some of our, and have this backwards and forwards. I much prefer the banter, because this is also what it's about. It's bi-directional, it's multi-directional, it's multipolar. No more of that negative pyramid. The pyramid is in all of us. If we're going to use the pyramid, it's like the knife. We're using it to break the bread, to feed the family, not to do a satanic ritual. It's all about reactivating all the grid lines for the positive again, for we the people.
Very good. We the people, quite so. Homo sapiens sapien, as we transmute and transcend into Homo luminous. George H. Lewis, brother, thank you so much for joining me today. Such a joy. And I'll speak shortly. I'm heading to the United States tomorrow. Actually, I'm heading the following day. I'll be landing in the US. I'll be there throughout the month, and maybe brush into you. That would be delightful.
Lots of love.
Thank you. God bless you. Okay, friends, my round up here. I'm going to just quickly check on my notes. Christy's instructing me to frame the conversation with with George as humanity's collective initiation, and I'm not sure that I'll need to do that now, because I think we just went into that. And the takeaway for me is that it's to do with the return to innocence in each of our lives, and only you can adjudicate what that means to you. I know I've been in the last fortnight through a complete death and a rebirth, a shamanic death and a rebirth at the psycho-sexual, psycho-intellectual, psycho-emotional levels, because all of those bodies are so interwoven and braided into one another. So one is forced in a true shamanic rite of passage to move into the sacral, the base energy, and move up into the most painful, the psionic and emotional center, and then up toward the heart, and then take it up towards the expression here, and then up towards the perception, and then to the crown, and work any suppressed energies, shadows, the braiding and the cording that we have to satanic and Saturnian and Luciferian aspects and elementals that are all around us in the world, in all of the planes, the subdimensional, hyperdimensional planes. So we are the body temple of the human being, is the technology, the only technology by my reckoning, which is really able to fully feel the trial of separation. And in so doing, instead of fleeing in a fight or flight survivalist way into another game, another hologram, another relationship, another addiction, another something, instead of doing that, to bring oneself home to the 0 point of the sufferance of the moment that you're dealing with. And for the first time in my unholy life, but goodly life, I've managed to do that, to really dive incredibly deep into that most sacred and forlorn, in that sense, sullied aspect of my soul, the bit that sits in grief and in shame, and is colored more by grief and shame than anything else. And then one sits with that within the root of one's own being in true honesty and authenticity is exactly what I learned in this trial that I've been through and I'm emerging through. And what George just said, it was absolutely to do with authenticity and the degree to which I have been forced into that authenticity with self. And what a reckoning that's been. What an incredible benediction. And I see that it was me gifting that to self. And I hope that my words in some way, shape, or form are mirroring the greater expression of many of you at this time, because I do recognize in my humility, humble, not humble, in my humility, I do recognize that my story is a fractal, refraction, reflection, echo in that sense of the greater story that is afflicting us at the meta level. And I'm talking about the death and the rebirth, government, economics, archaeohistory. Every subject known to man is now moving into dissolution. Everything that we ever thought we knew about self, about one another, about life, about his and hers, about up and down, left and right, is now under serious cosmic review. And only you can gain the clarity of the emergence of pure truth that comes through that crisis, that dialectic, that breakdown of the hemispheres. Only you can determine what the next unfoldment is if you are bearing witness in a state of absolute pure truth and authenticity, which means organic, friends. It means stay organic. Step away for the love of the living Christos. Step away for the love of the living Magdalene. Step away for the love of the living God. Away from all synthetic molecules. That much I have now learned and seen is the gravest existential threat facing our world. Because the group dreaming that is under the sway of synthetic molecules one way or the other through the weaponized biosphere, big pharma, and agrochem, that is where we are being diabolically entrained into another cycle of bad dreaming, which will manifest as reality. So that said, deal with your addictions, friends. Deal with anything that pulls you outside of the atom seed of self toward something, a pull towards an addiction, an affinity to something outside of self, for the love of God. Entrain that back into 0 point, and then open your eyes, see the world through the eyes of a child, and we will all conjugate in a morphogenetic upshift at that point in time, which of course is timelessness. Thank you, friends. I'm going to leave it at that. We've just come out of our Cosmic Intel monthly astrological drop with my beloved George A. Lewis. We are shortly going into Dr. Malcolm Bendel and Dr. Robert Moralic, the return of the Vajra, the thunderstorm generator, followed by Soul Hackers, the hidden war for human consciousness. This focuses around the black cube phenomenon. This speaks to the Saturnian logic. This speaks to what lies behind the forging of monotheistic religiosity, which is the most destructive technology that's ever been waged against humanity. Just this morning, I've been assailed by Bible-thumping Christians who believe themselves to be Christians. They are idolaters. They are filled with hate, bitterness, and fear, and their words and their syntax betray them. Anyone who is addicted to religious mythos, a monotheistic religious mythos, without understanding the mystical traditions of these beautiful religions, are indeed idolaters. So the technology of idolatry is really what we're discussing here, soul hacking, with Dan Winters, my beloved friend. Then finally, blessings of liberté with Marsha Willardson, my center of gravity with the New Earth Nation Coalition. which is the house, the temple that we have built. Friends, that ends my preamble. I'm going to hand the reins over to Christy, and I'm going to be here with some of my lovely friends, and we'll be watching out the rest of the symposium and looking in on the comments. Thank you so much for listening to my wheezing for about 22 minutes over the hour. Christy, my apologies. Over and out, friends. Thunderstorm generator, the return of the Vajra with Dr. Malcolm Bendel and Dr. Robert Haralick. Today, this conversation focuses on where science, technology, and ancient wisdom converge. And at the heart of it is the thunderstorm generator, a revolutionary invention that could transform not only energy and propulsion, but also our understanding of how ancient knowledge and modern physics intersect. So we're exploring essentially the power of the revival of legendary devices like the Vajra. Oh, let me grab it. There we go. That creature there, which many of you have seen, because I take that around the world with me for a number of years. What is it? What does it represent in the modern domain? And what is the context to the, I guess, cosmogenetic and archaeo